political or economic event. Radio Algeria International, our voice in the world.
This is the English service of Radio Algeria International. It's time for the news.
President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune is chairing a meeting of the Council of Ministers to discuss different topics, notably preparations for the summer season and the 2025 harvest season. The Minister of National Education, Mohammed Saghir Sadawi, has given the official kickoff for the National Baccalaureate exams for the 2025 session at El Idrisi High School. And the Israeli occupation has pursued its attacks on Iran for the third consecutive day, targeting military sites, nuclear-related facilities, as well as 2 fuel depots in various areas of the country. And China has announced the U.S. Reciprocal tariffs policy as a one-sided, misleading approach, calling on Washington to adhere to World Trade Organization. And those were the major developments. Now the full news edition. I'm Asia Bakar. Good afternoon. President of the Republic Abdelmajid Tebboune is chairing a meeting of the Council of Ministers to discuss preparations for the summer season, arrangement for receiving the Algerian community abroad, and the 2025 harvest season. The meeting is also tackling mechanisms for caring for women victims of violence and the terms and conditions for benefiting from the Productive Family Program. And now the Minister of National Education has given the kickoff for the National Baccalaureate exam for the 2025 session at El Idrisi High School in Sidi Mohammed here in Algiers. Miriam Burshi has the details.
Over 5 days, 878,857 candidates are taking the final baccalaureate exam in 7 specialties scattered at 2,964 examination centres under the monitoring of 308,000 supervisors. Speaking at the press conference held on the occasion, the minister showed that all material and human resources have been mobilized for the smooth running of these exams in an environment conducive to fair competition for candidates at examination centres located across the country, while calling on the candidates to remain confident, calm and focused.
We wish our children success and good luck in this exam. You know that this exam is of a great importance in our society, and even state institutions are mobilizing funds, making great efforts, and providing important equipment and means for this exam to allow our children to have a decent atmosphere with good conditions, conducive, positive competition among our children.
This year is marked by a significant increase in the number of independent candidates, which reached 330,612 candidates, according to the Ministry of National Education. To further facilitate the process for baccalaureate candidates, the Ministry of Education has assured that the websites dedicated to downloading invitations will remain accessible until the end of the exams to allow candidates to retrieve this document in case of loss. Meanwhile, the control services under the Directorates of Commerce of the region level are continuing their control operations of catering centres dedicated to students and supervisors of the 2025 baccalaureate exams throughout the national territory. Specialized inspection teams have been mobilized to ensure rapid and effective intervention if necessary, and daily control and monitoring operations will continue in order to ensure a healthy and safe environment for candidates and supervisors.
Entrusted by the President of the Republic, Mr. Abdelmajid Tebboune, the Minister of Health, Mr. Abdelhak Sayhi, is participating in the One Health Regional Conference in the Middle East and North Africa region held in the Tunisian capital, Tunis. Mohammed Khatil has the details.
The 2-day conference is marked by the participation of 17 countries and 40 senior officials, including ministers from the health, agriculture, and environment sectors, as well as experts and specialists, with the support of international organizations such as the World Health Organization, WHO, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, FAO, and the World Bank, WB. Algeria's participation is part of its continued support for the One Health initiative, which has become a necessity in the face of growing health and environmental challenges, particularly with the spread of zoonoses, climate change, and environmental degradation. Algeria's participation reflects its firm commitment to a holistic and integrated approach, combining public health, animal health, the environment, food, agriculture, trade, and industry in order to address complex and interdependent health risks. On the occasion, the Algerian health minister will deliver a speech in which he will present Algeria's experience in implementing the One Health approach, particularly with regard to the creation of coordination mechanisms between different ministries, the adoption of preventive policies in the areas of health surveillance, and the development of early warning and response systems, measures that contribute to strengthening the country's capacity to deal with potential health crises. The minister will also expound national initiatives aimed at improving the public health system, strengthening food security, and preserving environmental resources. Earlier, Mr. Sayhi met with his Tunisian counterpart, Mr. Mustafa Farjani, with whom he discussed ways to strengthen bilateral cooperation in the health sector and exchange experiences in the best interests of the two brotherly peoples, and to strengthen the bonds of brotherhood and cooperation between Algeria and Tunisia.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and more airstrikes have been carried out by the Israeli occupation against various areas of the Gaza Strip, killing and wounding several Palestinians. The news agency UFA said that 5 people were killed and several others wounded when the Israeli occupying forces fired at groups queuing for food aid in Khan Yunis in the southern part of the enclave. This brought to 79 the number of people killed for the past 24 hours in the Gaza Strip. Similar attacks have targeted over the past weeks a distribution aid sites in the southern town of Rafah, as well as the central part of the territory. And now the Israeli occupation and armed forces has pursued its attacks on Iran for the 3rd consecutive day, targeting military sites, nuclear-related facilities, as well as 2 fuel depots in various areas of the country, including Tehran. The oil ministry stressed that the 2 oil depots located in Shahran, northwest of Tehran, as well as in the southern part of the capital, were hit by the Israeli airstrikes. Over 10 people have been killed and more than 200 wounded in the spate of attacks launched by the Iranian army against the Israeli territory, causing damage, notably in the northern part of the country. The two countries exchanged missile attacks overnight in the wake of unprecedented airstrikes launched by the Israeli army on Iran. According to the news agency Tasnim, one of the defense ministry's buildings was hit by the Israeli strikes in the central city of Isfahan. You still listen to Radio Algeria International, and the Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said that Iran's repercussion would naturally end if Israel put a halt to its act of aggression. Addressing diplomats in Tehran, he accused the Israeli government of seeking to derail the negotiations on nuclear program with the U.S., reiterating his country's opposition to any agreement that will deprive Tehran of its nuclear rights. The Iranian Minister of Foreign Affairs reiterated that his country remained open to any agreement guaranteeing that Tehran is not seeking to possess the nuclear weapon. The Iranian authorities have rejected the Israeli attacks as a blatant violation of UN charters and a clear act of aggression against Iran's territorial integrity and sovereignty, and pledged to riposte by all necessary means. Earlier, the UN senior official for political affairs Rosemary DiCarlo condemned the escalation of tension in the Middle East and warned against the global repercussions of a conflagration would have on the region.
I reaffirm the Secretary General's condemnation of any military escalation in the Middle East. I also underline the obligation of member states not to use force against the territorial integrity or political independence of any state, and in accordance with the UN Charter and international law. I reiterate the call by the Secretary General to both sides to show maximum restraint at this critical moment and to avoid at all costs a descent into deeper and wider regional conflict. Of particular concern is the strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. It has been reported that the Natanz enrichment complex, which houses both the fuel enrichment plant and the pilot fuel enrichment plant, suffered significant damage, including centrifuge cascade calls. Finally, the latest dangerous escalation follows some significant diplomatic developments. Talks between Iran and the U.S. were to resume in Oman this weekend. I encourage such diplomatic efforts to continue. A peaceful resolution through negotiations remains the best means to ensure the inclusively peaceful nature of Iran's nuclear program. We must, at all costs, avoid a growing conflagration that would have enormous global consequences.
Reacting to the rise of tension in the region, U.S. President Donald Trump warned Iran that the U.S. would respond with strength to any attack, while reiterating that his country was not involved in the Israeli attacks. This came in response to Iran's assertions that it holds evidence about the U.S. forces' support to the Israeli attacks. And Iraq has urged the United States to uphold its responsibilities to prevent Israeli aircraft from breaching Iraqi airspace to carry out attacks. The spokesperson for the commander-in-chief of the Iraqi armed forces stated that the Iraqi government called on the U.S. to fulfill its obligations under bilateral agreements and international conventions to prevent such violations. The Iraqi government reiterated its firm and unequivocal rejection of any violation of Iraqi airspace or its use for military attacks carried out by the Israeli occupation against Iran or any other neighboring country. Iraq has exercised the highest levels of restraint in hopes of allowing diplomatic and political solutions to defuse the crisis through peaceful means. And now China has denounced the United States' reciprocal tariffs policy as a one-sided, misleading approach, calling on Washington to adhere to the World Trade Organization rules and uphold the stability of the global trading system. Mohammed Khatel.
During a WTO Council for Trade and Services meeting, the Chinese delegation argued that the U.S. narrative focuses disproportionately on good trade while ignoring its significant surpluses in service trade. China highlighted that the U.S. benefits extensively from high-value activities such as research, development, design, branding, and sales, which generate far greater returns than surface trade data indicates. The delegation urged the U.S. to abandon double standards, emphasizing that WTO rules should benefit all members, including developing nations. China also noted progress in bilateral consultations with the U.S., which have eased tensions. However, it stressed that such negotiations must remain aligned with WTO principles, avoid discrimination, and safeguard the interests of third parties. Calling for broader multilateral cooperation, China urged the WTO members to address trade concerns within the organization's framework rather than resorting to unilateral measures. It also underscored the urgency of accelerating WTO reforms to foster a more open, stable, and predictable global trading system. The Chinese delegation's position found widespread resonance among WTO members, including the EU, Australia, Canada, Brazil, and Pakistan. These nations reiterated the growing importance of services trade, describing it as a cornerstone of global economic resilience and a critical force in maintaining supply chain stability. The members collectively called for enhanced collaboration to uphold multilateralism and promote the sustainable and stable growth of global trade.
You're still listening to Radio Algeria International, and Russia and Ukraine have exchanged prisoners of war with Russia, also returning the bodies of 1,200 deceased Ukrainian soldiers to Kiev. The exchanges are part of agreements reached between the two countries during talks held in Istanbul earlier this month. Earlier, Ukraine confirmed it had received the bodies of its soldiers killed in action. However, Russian state media reported, citing sources, that Moscow had not received any of its war dead back from Kiev, echoing a statement Russia made on Friday when it said it had returned the bodies of 1,200 slain Ukrainian soldiers and received none of its own. It is the fourth in a series of handovers of soldiers' remains to take place in the past week, in accordance with an agreement reached between Russia and Ukraine at talks in Istanbul earlier this month. And now to the Democratic Republic of the Congo. At least 19 people died in floods caused by torrential rain that hit Kinshasa. The province's interim minister, Thierry Kaboya, stressed that important infrastructures were damaged by the floods, notably the roads. In the megalopolis of 17 million inhabitants, rain and floods regularly claim lives. According to experts, global warming is also to blame, adding that they believe that extreme events will increase in frequency and intensity on the continent. According to the United Nations Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs, OCHA, around 6.9 million people were hit by torrential rain and severe flooding in West and Central Africa in 2024. And now the Austrian Chancellor Christian Stocker has said his government plans to tighten national gun laws after enduring its worst school shooting. Speaking to Austria's national public radio, Stocker said officials aimed to set stricter eligibility rules for possession and purchase of arms after a 21-year-old Austrian man last week shot dead 10 people at a high school in the city of Graz before killing himself. Stocker said that the planned measures would look at things such as age requirements and how to treat certain weapons. A spokesperson for the Chancellor's office said that the cabinet plans to agree the measure on Wednesday. The newspaper Kronenzeitung said that the proposals include enhancing psychological expertise in schools, increasing police presence there, improving data exchange between authorities, and tightening restrictions for individuals deemed to be at risk. You're still listening to Radio Algeria International. That's it for our news bulletin. I invite you now to listen to the international event of the week.
The international event of the week.
A curfew was imposed this week in Los Angeles after President Trump ordered the deployment of U.S. Marines